Hello, world. Welcome to the Innovation Coaching Podcast. My name is Klaus Hostel, and with me today I have Neil Schambra Stevens. Neil, tell me how I can help.
Oh, well, that's a great opener. How can you help me today?
We'll pretend I can. Whether it's true or not, we'll find out.
Okay. I think that what I appreciate about you, Klaus, is your attention to sort of efficiency, productivity. So I'm sort of reaching out for that.
Hmm.
And I like the way you think big. And one of the things that I'm looking at right now is how, as a coach, as a business coach, I can scale.
Hmm.
So I've got some ideas. I know some of my limitations, but I think just opening up those a little bit and digging into those, poking into those, I reckon you could help me with that.
I'll do my very best. Let's both, for me, I know some of this already, but especially for our audience, take him on a little bit of a journey. Just dial back a little bit and say, what is the coaching you're doing now? And what is it we're talking about scaling?
Okay. So I'm a CMO turned business coach. And as a CMO, I worked for nearly 30 years in brand marketing advertising for some pretty big, Fortune 500 brands,
Pretty big brands. Yeah.
big, big brands. A mixture of sort of sports lifestyle and tech. And yeah, again, a sense of scale. I think the biggest one I worked for was Lenovo, and I ran global advertising for them at a time when they were $45 billion. So quite a sizable, yeah, it's like the biggest brand you never heard of. Sizable chunk of cash. So always been loving the brand side, the marketing side, but it was really people that I felt that was my sort of true calling. So where are we now? 4 years ago, nearly 5 years ago, I started Mercury Jam Coaching, which was focused on how we can bring more kindness into the workplace, how we can improve people's well-being and performance and productivity, and specifically mid-level and mid-career people in organizations, because from my experience, they're the ones that are overwhelmed, under-supported, underserviced with coaching, with support and things like that. And specifically creative strategists and marketeers. So that's sort of the my sort of motivation, my why for doing it. I'm all about kindness and the benefits that kindness can bring to the workplace. And I currently have coaching programs, one-on-one coaching programs. I also do keynote speaking. And back end of last year, I self-published a self-care, self-help book called A Bad Hand Played Well. So those three are my tools: the book, the coaching, and the keynotes. And what I'm looking to do this year is to really scale, to build out my ecosystem, if you will. It's me. I think it's always going to be me with some, partners in crime along the way. Um, but yeah, that's sort of my background. I don't know how. I know you and I have spoken before, but hopefully that gives you some insight.
No, that's excellent. That's excellent. It also gives us a good it also gives us a good place to start. Tell me of why do you want to scale? What is it? Is it more money, more impact, more fun, more stability? Do you need to impress your wife? Like what, why scale?
Well, I refer to it as that's my children's mother now versus my. It's a combination of those things, right? So I would like to. My motivation is enabling people to be seen, heard, and valued, right? If I can make more people feel seen, heard, and valued,
Sure.
that would be great. Along the way, if I am being more creative in the way and the tools and the programs that I create, then that reaches more people. And also, each of those tools, each of those programs is a revenue stream as well. So yes, ultimately, the incremental actions of doing those things generates more revenue. But the starting point, the real starting point for me is to reach more people.
Sure.
I do one-on-one. I impact people's lives in that 30-minute session, that 1 hour session, that 2 hours. I love it. The feedback I get, fantastic. And how do I help more people feel much better about themselves and enable them to move forward? That's my primary motivation. But along the way, sure, multiple revenue streams means more revenue. So,
Which is usually not bad, right? I mean, all things considered, you can always give it away once you have it.
you can. It's a good starting point for sure. Yeah.
So, two immediate thoughts. And one of them is just because I know somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, say the obvious, guys. One of you say the obvious thing. We're right now on a podcast that's also a coaching session. You are a coach talking about reaching more people. So the first and obvious thing is just copy this format. It's not going to be big, but it might actually work.
It's an interesting one. I think that
It doesn't work for everything, right? There's a lot of coaching that is not fit for everybody's ears, but there might be some of the work you do that could be broadened out. And it doesn't have to be podcast, this just because that's what we're on. It could just as well be, let's say you take 100 people into an auditorium and one of them says, I'm open to getting a live coaching session on stage. Now you're coaching one person, but you're indirectly talking to 100.
yeah. I think within the coaches, if there is such a thing, the coaches playbook, you've got the programs, you've got the podcast, you've got the book, you've got those elements. And it's what is the secret sauce for each of those? And I one of the things that appealed to me were reaching out to you. I don't think I've seen a podcast which is about life coaching, if I'm honest.
I hadn't seen it either, so I thought,
Yeah. So I thought that's a cool thing. I'll give it a whirl. Because again, as I said before, I trust you. That might be a really, that might be a really bad decision on my right here, right now. I trust you. So yes, podcast, but then what is the pod? Because there's a world of podcasts out there.
sure.
And I think is that usually there's the format of either it's short, words of wisdom, try these three things, or it's me talking to people who are much more interesting than me in terms of what they do and what they're interested in. So I have considered it. And at this stage, it's not off the table, but I think there's probably a couple of low-hanging fruit off on the back of the book that I would like to
Sure.
focus on.
Now, and the reason I mention it is that we could just as easily be doing this with the roles reversed. It might just as easily have been you reaching out and saying, hey, Klaus, I'm doing coaching. I've thought about how to do coaching and the podcast. So I decided to do a podcast where I do coaching.
Yeah.
Do you want to be a guest? And I would have said, yeah, I'd love that, right? We could easily have done this exact thing we're doing now, just with the roles reversed, which makes me think maybe there's something there. Might not be, but that's at least an idea, right? So one is just a direct copy of format of doing live coaching as a podcast. Second is this, what could that look like? Whether that idea of coaching for both a person and an audience, like that, is it doing in front of an auditorium? Is it doing, I mean, Anthony Robbins essentially does sessions where he combines live coaching with this, move it, inspirational stuff. And that means some people get coaching micro sessions in front of 1,500 people. So that's, I'm not saying fill a stadium and go Anthony Robbins style necessarily. That's a whole different world, but saying that there might be something in that, right? It might be, you might film 10 of your coaching sessions with people who are okay with that. And now that's a video series.
Yeah.
Maybe, right? Maybe not, but that's at least an option. And another option that is one, and this is a thought exercise, so I want to go down a bit of a rabbit hole, but I think it'll lead us to good stuff. Let's imagine for a moment that you had to design something digitally within the coaching realm, a coaching experience that can be made digital, fully automated digital, and you can sell it to Indian university students for $1. And why do I say that? Why is this a thing? It's because in this world, which is full of amazing and wacky people, sometimes both, one of the biggest target groups out there, target demographics that's clearly defined, is Indian university students. There are, I can't remember the numbers, I want to say 20 million or so a year, if not more, that start. So it's a huge demographic. They all have one thing in common. They're trying to get through a bit of higher education. They're all Indian, obviously, and most of them speak English. They also are very much into upskilling. If you know anything about Indian university students, you'll know, and some of our listeners may be some, that they love taking courses and bettering themselves, right? The average one has diplomas up and down walls like you wouldn't believe. And so there's a hunger for coaching or learning or kind of teaching in that. And they don't have a lot of money, so price it at $1 and they can afford it. Plus, a lot of them know others, right? If you can hit one Indian university student who says, I did Neil's online coaching 3-hour experience for $1, you should do the same. It travels fast. I'm not saying this is where we end, but just as a thought exercise, what is a thing you could offer as a digital built-in experience for Indian university students that could be sold at $1?
As you was, I just want to respond just briefly. As you were saying that, it triggered loads of thoughts. When I came to launch the book,
this is me smiling. We can't see it, but this is me smiling.
When I came to launch the book last year, I had actually somebody in India reach out to me who was interested in coaching. And we came to a reciprocal agreement. Like, you've got skills, like digital skills, marketing, social skills, social media skills that I need. There is a price barrier in terms of obviously euro and rupee or whatever. And I coach them in exchange. I've had an insight into that world that you're describing. And as you said it, I'm like, that's me having a light bulb moment. I was like, yes, that's amazing. Now, in terms of what I think I could offer is I've considered doing modules of like 3 5-minute videos with some narrative around it on particular topics. So maybe not targeted right now at the an Indian university student, but for example, a job seeker, like who.
Sure.
How do you work on your transferable skills? Your time rich but cash poor. How do you maximize that time that you had? How do you manage anxiety whilst you're looking for the job? So I've got these short little ideas that I'm working on right now. If I were to give some time and thought to what could I offer? So I'm based in Amsterdam, and I know there are a lot of Indian students who are doing great things in India, but are also looking to maybe go to a university here in the Netherlands or the UK or other parts of Europe, for example, or the US. And so being able to package up their transferable skills in terms of how you would appeal to either, an ad agency in Berlin. How do you do that? I could offer like a short video of how that you coach people to just riffing off the top of my head.
Yeah, just as an idea. And then if we take that basic idea, which I think in itself could be good, then if we package it a little bit differently, because the world is full of online courses that are essentially one-way video of somebody talking into a camera. Maybe they do it well, maybe they don't, and then the other person at the other end listens. But having done these sorts of trainings, both as a participant, but also developing, one of the things that I've found, this is not really my finding, this is the truth, is that interactivity is both king and queen in these spaces. So if you take, instead of saying, here's a 5-minute video of Neil talking, says, here's a 1-minute video, then there's a break, then there's a decision to be made. What do you like best, or what do you think, or what appeals to you, or which of these, whatever. Not necessarily a yes, no, or like a solution thing. Not that you have to, what was the model he mentioned? Not that sort of, but something where you have to think on your own. Which of these, here are 3 approaches, which do you like best? Then you have another minute or 2 of you talking, then you have another decision or another reflection. If you spice that into it, then suddenly instead of your 5 minute video, which is you're good for 5 minutes, I know that, but then you have it broken up into even smaller bits, and you have that interactive part of it where not only are you making them hear and think, you're also making them think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And suddenly that is okay. So our module one is 5 minutes, which is three decisions and one video broken up into three chunks. And then module two is the same structure. And then the last one has a little bit more, ta-da, replace these things or make a photo collage of the job you want, whatever it is, right? Something where they do something,
Yeah.
and something that gives them a memory anchor. And now you package that, and now we put it up on a website and put in a simple price, simple $1, $2 price thing, and then throw a credit card payment on it, and then throw it out to people in your network who are connected to that world, and see if it travels.
Mm.
I'm not saying necessarily this is what you should do, or I'm just saying that sort of thought exercise I find useful for getting into thinking, okay, if we could do something for 20 million Indian university students, just in theory,
Yeah.
then that must be scalable. And if we could do that, then you could do that sort of thinking for European chief marketing officers who've been in the game 10 plus years.
Mhm.
Then it's a different experience they're getting, but you could use the same format. And then maybe the price tag is not $1 or $2, but a bit higher. And
Yeah.
now you suddenly have your self-running recurring revenue stream. It's all about making it good enough so that somebody likes it and tells a buddy about it, and then it travels.
Yeah. I think what appeals to me about that is when you ask what's my motivation for doing this, it's like reaching more people.
Mm-hmm.
And from my experience, like I referenced Lenovo before, I was based on the east coast of the States, and I had 26 direct reports in Bangalore. I had a team in Bangalore, Singapore, and Beijing. Time zones crazy.
Yeah, I remember you talking about the time zone chaos.
The talent, the talent that was in what was it called, the hub in Bangalore, as part of the Ogilvy network, unbelievable. So there's a as you described, there's a thirst for knowledge. There's a talent that's already there, and there's a certain sort of philanthropic element to this, but it's nothing, not in any kind of patronizing way, but it's something that there is people have this appetite, this thirst. They want more knowledge, and they're open for it. And sometimes, yes, the barrier is the financial piece because of this discrepancies between
Mm-hmm.
global economies. But if you can empower, a burgeoning group of students, for example, in India, I mean, that's incredibly powerful. And there are kind of groups and networks that I'm already connected to. And that's super interesting. Super interesting. And I think that as a model that you scale and use for different target groups around the world and who are servicing different needs, I think that one of the great learnings from COVID was how, online education, online training, learning just went through the roof. I mean, the week before COVID, I'd sort of secured the third of my hot desks within Amsterdam, and I was going to move around from agency to agency and do this live in training and in-house coach thing. COVID came along, we all shut down. I was like, oh, okay, that's not going to work. What do I do now? I moved everything online. So my clients are already, I have some in Amsterdam, I have some in the UK, I have some in India, I have some in parts of Africa, I have a lot in the US, and it's me based here because you can reach out to different people. So that's not the barrier. I think the barrier quite often is depending on where people are in their career growth, development, whatever. It is that they want to invest in themselves, but how much of a investment, disposable income, for want of a better expression, do they have? And I think if you can reconcile that barrier in terms of creating value, creating content, maybe at a lower price point, but you're doing it at scale for a broader group, that's the opportunity because it ticks my box of enabling more people to be seen, heard, and valued. So I'm up for that.
I like that. And I also think that one of the things that's is underappreciated in the digital world we now live in is that the hyper specific audience is easier than ever to reach. Where let's say you and I come up with an idea, we're bad enough at it, right? And then we look at time zones and then we say, you know what, Johannesburg, we want to appeal to dog walkers in Johannesburg.
Mhm.
We're going to create something for them, whether it's a podcast or a book or training program or a series of online events. Well, time zone is not a problem.
Yeah.
They're awake at the same time as we are. That's fine. Okay, so that's done. As long as they have internet, it doesn't matter where they are. And it means that we could probably, if we wanted to, build a not necessarily monetarily successful right off the bat. I don't know how many dog walkers there are in Johannesburg, but I'm guessing there are some. But we could definitely do something where we would reach some people, even though we're sitting in completely different parts of the world.
Mhm.
And the hyper targeting is more doable today because if everybody anywhere can reach anything, it means that if somebody out there creates a podcast called The Podcast with Advice for Neil Schambra Stevens, the moment you hear about that, you're going to think, who are these people? What's wrong with them? And also, I'm going to listen to an episode. If somebody says, I'm doing something for former CMOs, you might listen to an episode. If they're doing something for British expats in Amsterdam, you might listen to an episode. If they're doing something for men above 40, you might listen to an episode. But the broader it gets, the less it's about you. And I think the thing that we undervalue that COVID really taught us is that if you're trying to do something where reach is the main idea, not necessarily finance, which may come, but it's not the main idea, then you can afford to do that hyper targeted. And sometimes it's simple. I have a Philip who I wrote the pricing book with. He has a friend who's a graphic designer. And he decided after some tests in his career that he said, I will be a graphic designer and my customers will be people who have gotten burned by two cheap graphic designers. And he said, that's his positioning. That's what he tells his clients. That's what he does. He says, I will work with you if you have gotten burned by two cheap graphic designers. That's who I work with. And suddenly some people who are just looking for one, they'll never pick him because he's a bit more expensive and they want something cheap. But the ones who've tried it already and who've thought, next time we get somebody a little bit more expensive, they're his prime clients just by that simple act of positioning. And doing that, that's why I love the Indian students, because it's a huge group. Like there's 4-5 times as many of them as there are people in Denmark, but they all have some very clear things in common. The other one I looked at was American business school professors, right? Also, like of which there are a surprising amount, right? But they're still all have some things in common where it's tempting to say, oh, I'm trying to reach Europeans or men. It's like, okay, but there are a lot of them. There are a lot of us, and we're very, very different. And yes, even with avatars and that sort of customer journey stuff, but saying I'm serving these very specific people makes it easy to hit a lot of them because they all the podcast for somebody who has 4 kids and is divorced. Okay. If I have 4 kids and I'm divorced, I'm going to listen to that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think the it's something that you said earlier that it's really easy to overlook simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the more what you're saying with these various examples is that the more specific you think, well, that feels more that's going to alienate more people, and you're like, well, depends on who it is, and it's more relatable, right? I think if the example you gave, whether it's the dog walkers in Johannesburg or American university professors, it is something that or I think the graphic designer example is like, okay, I've been there, I've done that. This graphic designer understands
Mm-hmm.
some of my pain points that they went cheap because they thought they're going to get. Okay, so it's a value. It becomes then a value proposition.
Bingo.
So yes, the person is a little bit more expensive, but they're going to give me what I want, and they're not going to just I'm not going to be burnt again. And I think that's the fear where you're appealing to the emotional element of it as well. And I think the emotion for me is a key part of what I do, making sure that it's not just do this program and you will make more money and live longer or whatever. No, it's actually how you enjoy your day to day, how you thrive on the day to day, how you bring more joy into your day, how you it's a more fulfilling thing. And I think that's a key component for me to I shy away from certain clients and conversations where they're just, no, I just need to make more money. I'm like, that's not my motivation for coaching. There are some brilliant coaches out there who do that. I'm the six-figure coach, the seven-figure. I saw something the other day where someone said, I'm the eight-figure coach.
And that's the thing. If you have the seven figure, then there's a market in being the eight figure, right? It's
Someone's going to go, well, that. I'm like, I'm that seven or the eight-figure coach. And I'm like, and this might be alienating some people, apologize in advance, incoming. And you're 28. And I'm like, okay, there has to be, like, there is an element, I'm sorry, there is an element of experience that goes with this stuff. Otherwise, it's very formulaic. And yeah.
And I think on that now, I love that. I wanted to say that, but maybe this person's really good. But I do agree that it tends to become formulaic. And if it's formulaic, then it's not really coaching, then it's a coaching experience. But I think if we use that for a moment, use that disgust of the formulaic and say, what does a formulaic Neil Schambra Stevens thing look like? You don't want it, so what does it look like? Because that's also something that could be scaled, right? Let's say we, instead of doing if I told you, Neil, I'd like you to put together 50 yes or no questions that anyone can answer, and they can be like branching trees. So if you answer yes to them, then the other one, but you have 50 questions to play with and you make the order. Could you put that together in the way that would bring something to most people's lives? My guess is yes.
Yeah, I could. I mean, I think in terms of, but does it have to be yes or no, the response?
Let's make it easy and say it has to be yes or no.
Okay. Yes, I could do that.
Yeah.
I could do that.
And it'll take you a bit of time and some tweaking and testing and that sort of thing. Sure, but you could do that. Now we have a coaching experience. It's not coaching, but it's a coaching style experience that could be digitized and scaled easily.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's also monetized, that's a different question, right? But right now we're just talking reach. Means that if you threw that up on your website and it says, do you have 15 minutes for a coaching experience or an hour, whatever it is, right? And then this goes on and it's a solo thing and it's you're doing it on your own. And when you come out, you think, okay, that was worthwhile.
Yeah.
That could be done tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I think I mean, coaching is very much, as you know, it's about asking those good questions. And I think that and allowing people to marinate on them in their own time. And I do believe that there's great 1 hour coaching sessions out there. But if you gave someone like a little teaser, a little experience, and even if they did that, have you got 15 minutes? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. And then you went down that rabbit hole of those things, they would walk away. You would give somebody that value. Now you're giving away a certain content, but you're giving away a feeling and emotion like,
Exactly.
okay, this is a coach that I trust. I'm curious about. He's got a book. He does keynote. I want to know more.
It gets you into the system, right?
Yeah.
And part of it's an inspiration that I have an old friend, Jesper Toft, who's a business psychologist and a life coach and all that sort of stuff, who at one point said, hey, Klaus, you've helped me with some stuff. I'm happy to give you a bit of free coaching if you want to. I said, I'd love that. And we met at my office. And the first thing he said was, I want you to take a piece of paper, and then I want you to write down stuff you've done in the last 12 months that like highlights work life. And I want you to put on each of them, I want you to put from 1 to 5. 5 was you absolutely loved doing this, and 1 was you did it, but you definitely didn't love it. Just that. And I said, okay, I do a lot of stuff, and I tried to talk my way out of it. He said, just pick some of it, you idiot. I said, okay, I get it now. And he was nicer in language. But so then I started writing, And I'd written 10 lines. And Jesper, meanwhile, he said, I'll give you 15 minutes. I'll just go get some coffee and chill around the office and so on. And I wrote 10 lines, and it was already clear what my fives were and what my ones were. And I said, yes, but we don't need to do more of the session because I already know what I should start changing tomorrow.
So there was a real disparate. There wasn't twos and threes. It was like either a hell yeah or a hell no.
There were some twos and threes, but I didn't focus on them because I realized that twos and threes, you're always going to have some stuff that shopping, right? I do it. Do I mind? No, not really. Do I like it? No, not really. Where there was stuff like then accounting. Blech. I hated that. Now, very different, but I hated that. And there was like administration stuff and writing proposals. And it wasn't whether I was good at it or not. It was whether I enjoyed it. And I could just see one, okay, two, one. And then there were things like standing on a stage, coaching people, leading an event. Okay, five. Wait a minute. And it was a very clear picture. And it took nothing. And Jesper didn't even need to be in the room.
Mhm.
That could have been taken from his website if he'd had one. Then it could have just been a, hey, do you have this thing? Here's what you should do. And that would have made it scalable. And I think the tricky thing is that there's some things where they only work when we're in the room. But other things work very well if the trust has been established, even if we're not in the room.
Yeah. Yeah, I've sort of wrestled. That's a great example. I've wrestled with the fact about how to right now it feels like my product is my time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily agree with that. So I don't have to be, to your point, using the example, I don't have to be in the room all the time. So it could be a poll, a quiz. It could be a series of videos with yes or no decisions that you have to, and I think these examples are really helpful. That it's not like, how do you scale your business? Oh, do more, 1 hour conversations with one person. No, you break it down and you have, 4 15-minute conversations with 100 people. Yeah, yeah.
Or you do somewhere you're saying, I'm now going to do a thing where I'm bringing in 50 of you, and then you poll in the chat, what are we answering? Or, of course, the more you do it, the more it gets watered down. But on the other hand, it's not necessarily linear, right? If we talk for 2 hours, we probably get more out of it than if we talk for one, but there's nobody that says it's going to give us double the value.
True.
And there's nothing that says if we spend 8 hours on this Zoom call, then we're going to get 8 times the. In fact, we're pretty clear that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So there's sometimes there are some sweet spots. Just to give you an example, there's a thing I do when I do innovation training with people. One of the things I get them to do is I teach them a small method, which is basically a feedback methodology, and they do it for 3 minutes and then they swap, 3 minutes, then they swap. So they're in a trio and all 3 people get to try it out, and it takes 10 minutes, and then they talk a little bit and then they're done. Within 15 minutes, they've all tried it. And they've all tried kind of stating a problem for 1 minute and for 2 minutes getting feedback from the others and then rotating in a very formulaic way, but very effective. And somebody asked me, doesn't this work even better if you have 5 minutes or 10 minutes? I said, yes, it does, because then you have more ideas. But it also means that if, in case you're standing and somebody's just not giving you anything, then 2 minutes go past very quickly. Where if you have to listen to somebody for an hour and there's no chemistry, then it's a very long hour. So even though you might get more out of an hour, testing it for 2 minutes is better because the chance of it failing is much less, and it's easier to get people to try it. And then they can always do that later.
Yeah.
But doing those, like those tidbits, those snippets, I think is, especially when you're going for reach, is something that has something to it.
I think there's a merit to those short burst activities. I had a similar thing where sitting face to face with somebody, and you sat. There was 20 of us in the group, and you partnered up, and you sat and you just looked at somebody for a minute.
You've done that. Yeah. Wonderful trust builder.
You took it in turns, and then like 1 minute, and then I'm writing a bunch of ideas. And there was a particular topic, it was facilitated, there was a topic, there was a theme, and then you write them all out. And then I think we did that four times or something. So, that took 8 minutes back and forth. And then you took some of those ideas and you distilled them, and then we had to go round the room. And I think there were like post-its out on big bits of paper, and you wrote, I don't know, I'm making it up, but from those 20 people in that room, 100 different ideas in the space of, let's say, 15 minutes. It was incredible versus let's have a brainstorm. Who's got an idea?
Exactly.
It's almost like the intensity of the thought versus, well, to your point, it's like it's not the longer that you spend on something doesn't mean you're going to get more ideas out of it. I guess that's what you're saying, right?
Exactly. And it also means for scaling, it means that it's easy to think, I'll just do more of the same. If you know how to do 1 hour sessions, just do more 1 hour sessions. But one, you run out of time at some point, pretty fast, actually. And two, maybe if you did 1 hour sessions, 8 hours a day, you would get tired of it as well.
I mean, coaching, as you know, coaching, it requires a lot of intention, a lot of thought, a lot of listening. I mean, I think the key skill for coaching is listening as a superpower. It's something I talk about a lot. I avoid back-to-back sessions as much as I can because I need a break in between, let alone, being if I'm going to show up for the coachee, I need to make sure that there's a space that I'm showing up as best as I can.
Of course.
And I think that yeah, so I guess the takeout from this, our short conversation today, is about the value of the impact of time. That it doesn't have to be the longer that you spend on something or dwell on something, unless you're signed up for like, a 4 hour program, a 6 hour program, or whatever, and you
Sure.
go deeper into the weeds of particular limiting beliefs or growth opportunities. But I think there's a real value and power in just creating impact, creating trust, building value to say like, oh, that was a great experience. It was 15 minutes. Great. I want to come back for more. But even if I don't want to come back for more, I paid whatever, $1.
Whatever it was. And I think that's one part. And the other one that I want to strike a blow for is packaging differently.
Mm.
We all know how to package, right? We both do coaching. It's often like this. You're either sitting physically or you're now on a video call. It's one-on-one, it's quiet, it's relaxed, it's etc. But what if we instead, I'm not saying we should do this now, especially for the podcast format, but what if we instead let's do some rock and roll coaching where we're going to pretend we're at a bar. We'll go both get drunk and we'll sit here and we'll play loud rock and roll music and we'll do it in a loud, overly energetic manner. How does that work? What results does that give when everything has to be shouted? I don't feel I have enough time. Okay. Have you tried something different? Like, I don't know if it would work, but I know that there is some magic in different formats. And whether it's making a puzzle or making a card game or having a self-guided meditation, like it's very tempting to think this is what I'm trying to accomplish and this is the format that does it. Once, if you wanted to tell a story, you tell it like a book or a poem or a theater play.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit more. But now, you can tell it through a video game. You could tell it through a TikTok series. You can tell it as a podcast. There's many things you can do. There are many ways you can teach or you can coach or you can help or you can do things that are not bound by the formats we normally ascribe them to.
Yeah, and I think somewhere at the top of the conversation, I was saying like, "Hey, I'm a coach with a podcast," and specifically with my book, and people say, "Oh, have you got an audio book version?" Because I've got a paperback and I've got a Kindle, and I was like, "Yeah, I could record that," but I'm actually thinking about how I can release the book as a podcast. That's one of my ideas. Sorry, world, just blown that. But that's one of my that's one of my ideas, and how you then actually it's me reading and adding extra value, extra snippets and things. Otherwise, you're like, well, this is just a guy reading a book to me. And again, back to your point about how you would package things differently. That's why I want to focus on the thing, not the medium.
Bingo, right? A friend of mine, Frederick, an entrepreneur, created quite a few years ago, created these conversation cards. What it was he took a deck of cards, and then on 10 of the cards, if I remember the number correctly, he put in questions. So on the ace of fours, it would say, where do you like to go on holiday? Right? And it was called talk, conversation. And the idea was you would play the card game, you would play whatever card game you were playing, bridge or rummy or gin or whatever it was. And then when you hit one of these conversation cards, you would stop for a moment, and the person who read it would read the question aloud, and you discuss that, and then you'd go back to the game. And I remember thinking, that is so simple, it's stupid, and it's bloody brilliant.
Yeah.
And now here, 10 years later or so, he's got an empire because he's built, I think it's 30 or so of these conversations. Now there's a conversation card game for dates, for companies, for families, for friends, for men, for women, for dog lovers, whatever. And it's all built on this very simple, it's built on creating connection and conversations, but the format is a card game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a great summation, I think, that of the what is the thing and what is the best medium to do that through versus let's start with the medium and figure the rest out. Because I think that those I've seen a bunch of those what are they called? Brand cards, strategy cards. It's become more of a thing. But each of them are different. It's not like, oh, that's another pack of cards or another group or something. You know, it's actually they're doing a different. Each of them are doing a different job. And I'll bang that drum again. Something that you said is it's the simplicity of the idea. Sometimes we're like, well, that's too obvious. We can't do that. No, that's the beauty of it, and that's where we so often we miss a trick because it's like I'm playing a game and I'm going to interrupt the game randomly with a question. Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Why do you want to do that? Because it's about connection. It's about conversation. Bingo, done. I love that.
And it works. And it works for them, not just connection wise, and it feeds his speaking business, it feeds his purpose, it makes him grow as a human. He's got a staff. They're like, it works financially. It's like, it's this whole success story entrepreneurially. And it started with that very simple idea that was so stupid that it was brilliant.
Yeah. Love that.
So, Neil, Frederick's cards aside, we are getting to the roundup phase, the wrap up, if you will. I would like you to share 3 thoughts from our time here together for both me and for our audience, but most of all for you, because if you say something out loud, as you know, there's a better chance of it sticking as a nice memory anchor.
Huge believer in manifestation. Firstly, I mean, this isn't one of my 3, but thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. Super helpful, super insightful. I would say the power of simplicity is one thing. All too often people get like sort of an and strategy in terms of, oh, we could do this and we could do that and we could do this and we could do that. Just stick with the one thing. I think a second thing would be the micro targeting and connecting your purpose to a particular group and making it work for them. I think that's a really powerful thing. And I think just the last point about packaging things differently. It's kind of same but different, and it has a different wrapper, and it serves a different occasion, opportunity, whatever it might be. Whether it's like I've got 15 minutes to answer questions on a website, or I've got a 1 hour, or I'm going to do a live coaching with 100 people in the room, and one person's doing it and 99 benefit. Yeah, the packaging side of it. So I'd say those 3 things: packaging, the simplicity piece, and micro targeting are 3 great takeouts from this conversation.
Thank you for that, and thank you for being part of this. It takes courage to not only that it takes courage to go to a coach anyway, and to do that on like a live thing that other people are going to listen in on. That thank you for that.
Not at all. And just plugs for all the coaches out there or people listening. You don't need to have a problem to go and see a coach.
That is true. Oh, I love that. I wish I could have said that, but I'm not half as good a coach or half as smart. But thank you, because you're right. The moment you go, even if it's just, I sometimes have that with people. I say, what's a problem? And they're like, I don't have a problem. They say, okay, That's great. What's something you'd like that would be nicer if it was different? Oh, we've all got those, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it looks like. Thank you for this. Oh, go.
That's packaging, class.
Ah, see, it needs to end now because this is just
What you did there?
no, I love it. And it's simplicity. Okay, we got to stop now. Neil, thank you for this. For all of our listeners out there, you have heard Neil Schambra Stevens, and I'm your host, Carl Swasta. This has been the Innovation Coaching Podcast. Thank you for listening.